James Kaufman, World News Report today, July 26, 2025. God bless you and yours, no matter where you are in the world. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell for critical future updates. Lefties, illegals, and minorities are finally experiencing consequence culture. If you care about this country, please share this video or it will die right here. And please help the channel with a donation if you're able to. Travel back in time to the year 2021. You might find yourself in the middle of a bizarre debate over the virtues of cancel culture. At the time, the political left was aggressively trying to secure long-term power within the U.S. through a multi-pronged psychological offensive, a war on the minds of the masses designed to force Americans into submission. A big part of their strategy relied on the fundamentals of cultural Marxism, the combination of Marxist mob tactics, artificial consensus, and exploitation of minority grievances as a vehicle for controlling speech. This was the rise of the woke movement to all halls of government. The root of their power was not martial. In fact, the political left is weak and largely astroturf with minimal ability to project power in a physical way. If conservatives wanted to destroy them tomorrow, the task would be relatively easy. We don't, because many of us still hope that our problems can be solved through peaceful discourse. What the leftists did have at their disposal was a massive institutional apparatus of government agencies, corporations, big tech, and NGOs. The full might of the establishment cabal was on their side, which meant they had the means to enforce cancel culture and silence their ideological opponents. I don't think there's ever been a psychological war on a population that was more pervasive and tyrannical, not since Mao's Cultural Revolution in China has a citizenry been under such a siege by their own government. The fact that we survived this event defeated the onslaught and actually grew a grassroots anti-woke movement without the use of many social media forums is truly mind-blowing. Very few people today realize the level of victory that has been achieved. We thwarted perhaps the largest fourth-generation mind war ever devised, and we did it without any institutional access. We won by simple truth and word of mouth. Another tool that the leftists and globalists used was the mobilization of illegal migrants, gays, and minorities as a shield against criticism or counter-protests. If conservatives and moderates fought back with superior debate or our own protest group, we were immediately accused of racism, xenophobia, and homophobia. Merely presenting an opposing view to the progressive machine was considered an act of evil. Large contingents within all these groups were happy to go along with the agenda for numerous reasons. First and foremost, DEI, diversion, equity, and inclusion, allowed them to easily game the system. We saw how that worked over at USAID. They could snatch up grants, subsidies, welfare, and leapfrog over more talented and more intelligent competitors in education and business simply because of their marginalized status. Secondly, the system under progressives was two-tier. Leftist activists, illegals, and minorities were given preferential protection while breaking the laws and causing chaos. Conservatives were labeled terrorists for any act of defiance. We were banned from the largest web platforms. Some of us were targeted by online mobs and lost our jobs. Others were debanked and threatened with ostracism from the economy. Still others were imprisoned. This imbalance of the law bred a culture of entitlement, especially within the LGBT cult and the black community. Illegal aliens were given carte blanche to enter the country and feed like parasites. Not only that, but they were treated like heroes coming to save us from population decline and labor shortages. They all participated in the game willfully and joyfully. They were all a part of the problem, but of course, none of them ever thought the party would end or that they might end up facing consequences for their behavior. They joined the feeding frenzy without considering the inevitable clapback. The primary argument the leftists would often use to defend the application of cancel culture was that there was no such thing as cancel culture, only the righteous utilization of consequence culture. This was, of course, misdirection. The word consequence suggests that a person deserves punishment for wrongdoing, and that the leftists canceling him or her have the right to do so. Cancel culture was never about justice or karma. It was about suppression of anyone who disagreed with the political left. A corrupt group of psychopathic people with no support from the majority is in no position to dole out consequences. They can dole out harassment and intimidation, but never justice. In recent months, however, I think these people are finally beginning to understand what consequence culture really is, and clearly they don't like it. Leftists celebrated when Fox was pressured to fire their biggest name, Tucker Carlson, over his skepticism of the 2020 election and the insurrection claims surrounding J6. Carlson was mostly correct in his positions, but that didn't matter. The progressive view, it's a private company that can fire whoever they want. Now they are raging over Stephen Colbert getting the boot and losing his time slot. It's a sign that most leftist late-night hosts are facing the chopping block. Never mind the guy's show was bleeding around $40 million a year, and his audience in the coveted 18 to 34 age range was shrinking into oblivion. Never mind that Colbert was acting as a shameless shill for Big Pharma. Liberals demanded that his show remain in place. They demanded that he never face any consequences for selling out and acting as a propagandist instead of a comedian. How did that work out? Too bad he's toast, and there's nothing you or anyone can do about it. Welcome to real consequence culture. Within the black community, there's another form of accountability taking place. The BLM movement basked in their privileged status, ramping through cities and doing as they pleased under the protective hand of democratic governments. In the process, they destroyed whatever social capital they had left and ended decades of white guilt in the span of just a few years. Now, white conservatives and moderates just don't care anymore. We don't care about being called racist. We're not interested in the supposed trespasses of previous generations. We're never going to pay reparations. You're never going to see a dime. And we're not going to tolerate ghetto behavior in shared public spaces any longer. The term black fatigue has gone viral in the past few months for a reason. White people are done with passively accepting bad behavior from a certain subset of blacks. Many black Americans are also tired of ghetto culture and want it to end. As I've said many times, many of my friends are African American. The magical accusations of racism holds no power over us anymore. Interestingly, we see this change accumulating across the board, even in the corporate world. We see cruise lines banning typical ghetto habits on their ships. We see retailers abandoning predominantly black neighborhoods because of unfettered crime. We see DEI being dumped in hiring, and blacks and other minorities said they are being overtly affected. Well, this is what happens when you spend the last several years acting increasingly more unhinged, entitled, and violent. You were protected by a liberal narrative of historical shame, but that's dying out, which means people are going to start expecting you to display manners and self-control. Otherwise, there will finally be consequences. Illegal migrants might be the most entitled group of all. I can't fathom a bunch of Americans entering another country illegally and then demanding access to their job market and welfare programs while also carrying around American flags and protest and asserting they will have no intention of assimilating. They would be shot in the streets in most places, and no one would tolerate them. Now the same standards are being enacted in the U.S. after years of open borders. The illegals are outraged, but nobody cares. There is some moderate empathy from a tiny minority, the ones trying to hang on to their woke ideologies. I was also greatly amused by the recent interview with a slobbering, raving, and classless Hunter Biden. Let's not forget that Joe Biden was probably mentally vacant for much of his presidency, leaving Jill Biden and Hunter Biden to run things with their advisors behind the scenes. It is any wonder that America was falling apart, right? We had a degenerated crackhead and his psychopath mommy at the helm. If it is proven that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent during his term and most of his pardon signatures were forged by aides without his cognitive understanding, then old Hunter is in for some legal consequences of his own. In the meantime, the fact that the family has more than fallen from grace and Hunter is a national laughingstock is enough. When I witness the wide-eyed astonishment of these people as they finally face punishment, I think of the legacy of the Western world. I think of the generations of good men that worked tirelessly to institute a sense of order, principle, and the conviction necessary for our society to succeed. I am reminded time and time again how difficult it is to create a thing versus how easy it is to destroy anything. I'm reminded that our forefathers never would have put up with this shit. In the end, civilization cannot survive and thrive unless consequences are exacted upon people who deserve them. I believe we are entering a new epoch when any person or group, no matter their purported circumstances, will face automatic retribution for seeking to tear down the West. This is the way things used to be and should have stayed. The deconstructionists had best prepare themselves for the returning swing of the pendulum. And I will say, while all this was going on, my father told me this exact thing would happen, and I had little faith in what he had said. God bless. Please share, subscribe, and always remember, anything's possible. Bizarro world.